We're on Niddah Parak Yud, Mishnah Chet, 8th and final Mishnah, the 10th and final chapter of Masechet Niddah, last Mishnah in Masechet Niddah. In order to understand this Mishnah, we have to review. It's a good way of reviewing the general rules we had regarding Dam Niddah and Dam Ziva. Okay, well, now forget, Dam Niddah, remember, we said if a woman saw blood on day one, all she has to do is count 7 days, and at the end of the 7th day, she'd go to the mikvah, and that's okay. But for Ziva, remember we said if she saw, during the 11 days, after the 7 days of Yemei Niddah, if she saw 1 day, then the next day, okay, if she saw here, she'd have to examine herself, and she had to be what's called Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom. She has to wait another day, and then if she doesn't see blood on that day, she goes to the mikvah and she's fine. But if she sees 2 days, then she has to wait another day, and if she doesn't go to the mikvah, she's fine. But if she sees 3 days, then she's what was called, we said, if she sees Ra'ata Shlosha Yamim, she's called a Zava Gemara. This is all review. Now that's only if it's during the 11 days. Let's say she saw, 1, 2, 3, or 5, 6, 7, or even 9, 10, 11. But if she saw blood on the 10th day, she has to be Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom on the 11th. But because there's no possibility for her to have 3 days in the Ziva process, she can never become a Zava Gemura if she starts seeing on the 10th day. Okay, so we're going to see, the Mishnah is going to talk about what happens if a woman sees blood on the 10th day and doesn't do exactly what she's supposed to do. Says the Mishnah, Haro'eh Yom Achadasar. So here we're going back to our chart. She's on the day 11, the last day of her Yomei Ziva, and she knows. She says, I never become a Zava Gemura. But she still has to be Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom. But she doesn't do that. Haro'ah Yom Achadasar, she saw on the 11th day. V'tavla la'erev v'shimsha. So she went to the mikveh that night. She's like, all right. She examined herself. She stopped bleeding. She saw the 11th day. And then she went to the mikveh at night, v'shimsha, and she lived with her husband. Beit Shammai says, she's Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom. Mitam'in mishkav u'moshav, and therefore, she is mitameit. The mikvah is not good enough. She had to wait another day before she went to the mikvah. And sure, she is not only her, but also afilu haboel, her husband, the person she lived with, is mitamei mishkavu moshav. He himself is mitamei, things that he sits on and things that he lies on. Litamei ochli numashi, to make other things tamei. Why? Mipnei shehu kiba al shomeret yom keneged yom, because he is a person who had relations with a woman who is shomeret yom keneged yom. Okay, why? Desavrei Beit Shammai. Yom Echadasar by Shimur. Beit Shammai says, even though, let's go back to our chart, even though the 11th day, once she's got the 11th day, nonetheless, she'll never become a Zava Gemura. Nonetheless, it's the day 11, and therefore it requires Shimur, and she has to be Yoshomeret Yom Keneged Yom, and therefore, Chayavim B'Korban. Ziva is a din d'oraita. You have to do Shimur. Therefore, both of them, she has to have a Korban because Shimsha, because they had relations with a woman who's a Zava Shomeret Yom. Beit Hillel says no. I agree with you that she's tamei, that they're tamei midrabanan. But turin minak korban midoraita, they don't have to bring a korban because he says Beit Hillel. So let's go in the Bartunur for a second. Beit Hillel potrin minak korban. Why? The Savre, he says Yom Achadasar on the 11th day. Ho'il ve'en Yom Acharav mitzarei v'imo l'siva, because then there's no 12th day, so you can never get to more ziva. Lo ba'i shimur. You don't have to do shimur, but for Tumah, I agree with you, he says, because I don't want her to start, because what happens is, if on the 11th day I get you off Tumah entirely, it's going to mess up, women are going to get confused, and everyone's going to start, slippery sloping back into the rest of the day. So basically it says, Tumah, I agree with you, Beit Shammai. But when it comes to Korban, that's Chulin in the Azara and the Beit HaMikdash, I don't mess with that, and therefore, Turin mina Korban. Tavla b'yom shela'achar. I was like, whatever, she saw blood on the 11th day. So she's like, okay, fine, I'm not going to go that night, but I'm going to go tomorrow. So in the day, by Yom Shalachar. Nowadays, we never go to the mikvah. Women never go to the mikvah during the day, but they did apparently during the time of the Mishnah. They're talking about cases where, okay, I waited long enough. Now, so she went, now this is day 1. She didn't see any blood. She saw on the 11th day. She didn't go 11 at night. She's like, okay, I won't go tonight, but she went during the day. She did what's called Shimur Ktsat. Okay, let's look at the Bartuner for a second. Abda Shimur Ktsat. She watched a little bit. Maybe Shimur Me'aliyahu. She guarded, she kept herself. In the 11 days, she can't do that, right? She has to wait, Okay, she has to wait until, let's say she saw on the 9th day, she has to wait the entire 10th day, and she can only go over the night here. But here she saw the 11th day, she didn't go on the night, she went on this day. Okay, so she did what's called shimur ksat. She went to the mikvah, v'shimsha et beita, i.e. she lived with her husband, she shot beita, she serves her house, v'chakach ra'ata, and then she saw blood. Beit Shammai says, mitamin, mishgavu, moshav. So we see lemafreya retroactively, her shimur wasn't good, it had to be yom keneged yom. So therefore, retroactively, she's mitameh, mishkav, umoshav, but p'turim min korban. Let's go back to our case here. She saw blood on the 11th day. She waited until the night. She didn't go to the mikveh then. She went to the mikveh on this day, and then she saw later. So Beit Shammai says, midrabanan, we're going to call that not shemeret yom keneged yom, and therefore she's mitameh, mishkav, umoshav. Beit Hillel says, no, they're not tameh, because remember now, the dam she sees is not dam ziva. It's now the day 13. It's now day 12. There is no day 12. But Hareze Gargaran, he's a glutton. This guy that she can't wait until the night, okay? Gargaran, a glutton in a way, mimahar lachto, he's rushing to sin. Why? Shema yargil bitkach betoch achadasar. Because we're afraid, maybe, yes, in this case, where you're already over here and you're in the days of Niddah, you're okay. But if she makes that mistake here, that's an Isur D'Oraita, and you have to bring a korban. On the inyan tuma tahor, but everybody agrees you're tahor. That's what, and not everyone. That's what Beit Hillel says. Umodim, but they all agree. If she played this game, she saw on the 9th day of her Yemei Ziva, v'tavla la'erev, and she went to the mikveh that night, v'shimsha, and she lived with her husband. She couldn't do that. She had to be shomer yom keneged yom. Shemitamin mishkavu moshav chayavim korban. Then everything gets she's metamei, the seats and mattresses and the chayav korban. But in the middle of the 11th, Tavla b'yom shel achar v'shimsha. If they did shimur ksat, she didn't wait the whole day. She didn't wait the whole 24 hours. But she went to the mikveh during the day. V'shimsha, and lived with her husband. Harezu tarbut ra'ah. That's tarbut ra'ah. Bad culture. That's bad idea. Umaga'an ubi'ilatam tuluyim. The things that they touch and bi'ilatam and their relations are tuluyim. We have to wait, because if she doesn't see, you have to hold on. Tuluyim means they're hanging. She'im tireh, because if then she sees blood. Let's say she played this game and she's on day 9. So she didn't wait a whole 24 hours. Day 10, in the middle of the day, she went to the mikvah. She works that. So you have to wait. If she bleeds here, then it turns out or everything is tameh. Okay, magan zava v'chayvin korban bi'ilatan v'im lo tireh. But if she doesn't see any blood, magan to her, so you have to wait. But says the Mishnah, that's tarbut ra'ah. Bad idea, because you're playing with fire. We'll stop here. This is our conclusion of Masechah Niddah. We saw from here how much, how focused in the Mishnah they were on Korban, on Tuma and Tara. Whereas today we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, we don't have Tuma and Tara. All we have are the Hilchot Niddah that we keep devoid of the whole complication of the Beit HaMikdash. We'll dedicate our learning to memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Mazel Tov, Salik Masechah Niddah. Moving on to Masechah Machshirin. Kol HaKavod.